Welcome to Mystical Awakenings with Deb and RJ, right here on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, and we're super happy to be here tonight. Very, very excited for our guest tonight. We, 2 weeks ago, got to meet him at the Michigan UFO Contact. He was one of our speakers, and spend time with him, and it was absolutely wow.
It was like, when we met him, it was like we found a long lost soul tribe member. Yeah. And I'm just happy to say that it's probably going to be a continuing friendship for the rest of our existence here.
Exactly.
And beyond.
And beyond.
Yes.
So I'm going to let RJ tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll bring him on.
Well, if anybody does any research at all on ufology, he really doesn't need an introduction. He's very well known in the ufology fields. But for those who don't know him, our guest, he originally is from Baltimore, and he moved to New York in 1980. And for almost 30 years, he was an actor. He's an ordained interfaith minister and received a bachelor degree in letters from College of New Rochelle. I think that's how you say it, where he graduated cum laude. He received his Masters in Divinity Degree in Union Theological Seminary in New York City. He's also a longtime UFO contactee and experiencer. His book, Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, was in March of 2014, number 1 on the Amazons.com list of UFO-related books. Michael has also appeared on George Norrie's Coast to Coast radio show and on George Norrie's TV show Beyond Belief on Gaia Television. Other TV appearances include being a regular consultant on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, as well as being featured on the UFO TV documentary The Real 4400 and UFOs and the Hidden Evidence on the Travel Channel. Reverend Carter was also featured in Steven Spielberg's TV documentary Abduction Diaries for the Sci-Fi Channel. Diaries, it was the precursor to the Spielberg's HBO series Taken. Author Whitley Strieber calls Reverend Carter's his book, Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, the best book ever written on the topic. His 3 other books are A New World, If You Can Take It, God, Extraterrestrials, and the Evolution of Human Consciousness, God Consciousness, a 30-day meditation manual for God Consciousness Thinking, The Metaphysics of Spiritual Healing, and the Power of Affirmative Prayer. His most recent book is Initiation, The Spiritual Transformation of the Experiencer. All of his books can be found and purchased on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. Michael also serves now as the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Swannanoa Valley, located in the beautiful mountains of western North Carolina. It is our honor and our pleasure to introduce Reverend Michael J. Carter.
Hey,
Michael.
Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, those are quite the accolades, my friend.
Listen, pleasure. I was wondering if I knew the person you were talking about. Yeah, this is going to be a lifetimes We just kind of clicked, as you told the audience, and
Right.
hopefully we'll be, not hopefully, we will be working together in the future. And just thanks for having me on. You know, it's usually past my bedtime, but I'm still here at work at the church. So here we are.
Here we are.
It's almost Christmas time.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
it's
I don't
almost
want to
Halloween.
You're right. That's Halloween. You're right. And then, yeah, but it's here. It's the holiday season. My favorite time of year.
Yeah. So you've been a busy man. You've got a lot going on.
Yes.
You've got a wedding coming up.
Yes. November 5th.
Yep.
It's just been a crazy year. And you guys have been part of that. I mean, crazy in a good way. Got a new car. It's an old car, but it's new to me.
Right.
Going home, getting married. The work has been busy, with Ancient Aliens, and then with you guys, and during this new TV show over the weekend coming up. So I've just been very thankful, and it's just been a great year. I was talking to someone, even, we're on the brink of nuclear war, and, we got the culture wars going on and it's just keeping your feet in both worlds, that even during all this, there's always stuff to be thankful for.
Right.
And at the same time, human beings have to decide what we want to do with each other and going forward if we want to go forward. So It's an interesting time.
Yeah, and I want to get into that a little bit later about what's going on with us as a race.
Yeah.
But, we were so blessed to have you at the UFO Contact Convention.
That's mutual. That was a great experience.
Great feedback, and they loved you, and we loved you.
And I love them right back.
Yeah. So that was awesome. And I know I talked to you earlier, and I've read the Bible myself a few times, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in a religious family, but a spiritual family, but like a lot of people have, but I've always had questions,
Oh yeah.
I've always had questions. So tonight I want to get into a little, maybe what your take is on it, and maybe help me or help the audience, or just give a different take, on some questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
Is that okay?
And if there's anything that's uncomfortable that you don't
just say
feel like answering publicly.
Listen, it is what it is. If I don't know something, I'll just say I don't know, and just for people, because it can be a fragile topic, for lack of a better word, and just let people know that this is just my perspective. Right. I could be wrong, and I'm not here to take anybody's faith away.
Right.
And if it could be easily taken that way away so easily, then maybe it wasn't faith in the first place. But these are just my research and where I'm coming from.
Right. All right. Well, let's get started.
Yes.
And this question's come up many times, but I just wanted to see what your take is on. In the beginning of Genesis,
yes,
it says that man was created in our likeness, in our image. Mm-hmm. And to me, it seems like it's a joint effort. So what's your take on that? Who would be the joint effort in your opinion?
Yeah, it's interesting, the Bible, because it has contradictions and what have you. There's some people who said there are two different creation stories in Genesis, because they're two different stories. Well, it's you, Zachariah Sitchin, who I happen to have met before he died. He lived in my neighborhood in New York on the Upper West Side. He got this whole conversation going about the Elohim, and since he was culturally Jewish by nature, not a religious Jew, but he was Jewish, and so he knew the Hebrew, and of course he was a Sumerian scholar, and he was saying that the Elohim, let us make man in our image. That word "our" was plural, and so it's not one God, but gods, small g. So there's more than one individual talking about, let us create these humanoids, or these humans, in our image. And that's the key that kicks this whole thing off about are we children, if you will, of these extraterrestrials?
Right.
What scares people about that is, and you know, no one is saying, well, I'm not saying, even though there was a book written that Does God Drive a Flying Saucer by R.L. Dion, you know, what does God need with a starship?
Right.
But the point being is that when Zachariah Sitchin started talking about this, it was a game changer because it was hard to refute. Now, there are still people who say, well, it's interpretation or what have you, but clearly Elohim is plural. And so they're sitting around talking like a council saying, we want to make these people in our image. And that's the kickoff for Genesis, that there's not this one God
Right.
who's doing this, but there's a council of God sitting around saying, this is what we want to do. Of course, Zechariah Sitchin brings in the Anunnaki, sometimes called the Watchers by various names.
Right.
And the continuation of that story, Genesis 6, is what you're talking about, RJ, is found in the book of Enoch, where the sons of God come down to earth and mate with the daughters of men. Now, obviously, as you said, RJ, the other night, last night, if there was a prime directive, it was clearly violated. And we don't know whether they did it the old-fashioned way. One will assume they did, but we know they could do stuff in vitro and in laboratories, which is maybe how Miriam, Jesus' mother, became pregnant by still being a virgin, but that's another story we can get into.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into that because,
And so,
I mean, we have that ability now to do that.
Yeah, and they did then. And remember, St. Jerome was the one who said she was a virgin. I mean, she was about 14 years old, historians are talking.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, in the Hebrew, the word is Alma, A-L-M-A, and it meant a young girl, you know, whose hymen wasn't broken. St. Jerome, and all the politics that came with that, was saying that Jesus could, very God of very God, begotten, not made. His mother could not have had sex. So somehow it took away from the purity aspect,
right,
of life, which was nonsense. You have all these men who were monks, and who many of them were probably afraid of women, but yet they're writing these stories about women.
Mm-hmm.
And so, women were second-class citizens then. We could argue still are.
Right.
And so you have them making these laws and writing these stories. And a lot of them didn't even know anything really about women, but they had power. The church was having power at that time. So thanks to Zechariah, even though people are writing and rewriting his work, some of them not giving credit, but the whole Anunnaki thing, the planet Nibiru, all that's Zechariah's work.
Yeah, he's an incredible researcher. I mean,
he was.
I loved his books. I mean,
I have all of them.
Yeah, for some reason he was getting a bad rap about something, but I don't know.
Earth Chronicles. Yeah, because I mean, it's hard to listen if you take it seriously, and the government hiding. I mean, what you're saying to human beings are, we were created by extraterrestrials,
right,
not this omnipotent, omniscient God. Now, maybe he, she, it, whatever created them, but from what we're hearing here, I mean, it turns everything on its ear about religion, which is why you're not hearing a lot of people talk about it. Right. I mean, as far as I know, I know other ministers know about this, but they're going to risk their life in the sense of not maybe physically, but they're, all
their
the
job,
they're, and so but we're going to have to address it at some point. Right. So Zechariah comes out with this. We get the book of Enoch, which is continuation of Genesis 6. Mm-hmm. These fallen angels, 300 of them, they come down to Mount Horeb, and they come down and they teach humanity about crystals and gemstones and dyes and metallurgy, how to work with how to make jewelry, to making defensive weapons, astronomy, astrology. But apparently you weren't supposed to fraternize with the natives here. Now, I also think too that they broke a law, obviously. I don't know if every race has a prime directive, but I think also their mistake was they gave us information that maybe we weren't ready for then. They taught us how to make weapons and then we used them on each other. Right. And so I'm not trying to absolve them of, if that was your directive, but a lot of the stuff we use crystals and gemstones today. We study astrology and astronomy. I think that sometimes that maybe, like Shakespeare says, the fault, dear Brutus, lies not in the stars, but in ourselves, from Julius Caesar, that we may not have, well, clearly right now we're not ready. We have all this technology and we've just bombed each other to death. Right. And so if you don't have a spiritual grounding, you're like a gun, you're like a baby with a gun.
Right.
In your hand. Somebody's going to get hurt.
Right.
Most likely it's the baby with the gun. So technology doesn't always mean a deep moral or ethical center.
I want to get into this a little more, and Deb, chime in if you have something to say, because, this story about the fallen angels has always, got my curiosity. You said there was like 300 of them.
Yeah, in the Book of Enoch, he says there's 300 of them, and they give the names. There's Ariel, some Jeza, I forget, but most of them end with the letters El, which is God in Hebrew. Like my name was Michael, right. El. And so in Hebrew, the El at the end of it usually is talking about a God, which I'm saying are extraterrestrials.
So we get into the story. There was 300 of them. In my opinion, okay, whether they're extraterrestrials or angels, whatever you want to call them, if it was so wrong, and trust me, I'm not trying to make an opinion here or stand, but it seems to me if there was only 300, whoever it was could have stopped it, in my opinion. But so I've often wondered, was it part of the plan? Was it, was there a plan? Even going to Lucifer, right, who was supposedly God's right-hand angel, right?
Yeah, the most beautiful.
Yeah,
most beautiful angel. Lucifer was.
I've always thought, was there a deal made between them that you will go and test, humans, my children, for whatever reason, teach them sin, whatever you want to call it, and you will be the most feared and hated person, on earth. I've always wondered about that story. Was there a deal worked out, or did he really tell his king or his, God, whatever? I'm revolting. I don't believe what you're saying. I mean, to me, there's something missing there that I've always thought about, and I just want your take on that.
I don't know if it's something missing. I think. Well, of course, there's something missing, RJ. Right. You're right. I mean, because we never get the whole story.
Right.
What I think is difficult for us as human beings to fathom. The Greeks do it with their gods. Eric Van Donigan has written all these books about the gods of Greece, and then written about them. They act like us. See, that's the thing. We don't expect gods to lust after women. We don't expect gods to fight these wars and then have human beings fight. That's what blows the mind, because we're thinking of this omnipotent, omniscient God, and we have gods who drink wine, who get drunk, who have sex, who commit adultery, who come in peace. And so it's hard to wrap the mind around that, because the next question is, then is there a God?
Right.
And religion plays a major role in controlling people. It's not just that, but it certainly does. And so we start peeling the onion and we're starting to ask questions. And as you said, I mean, these questions you're not allowed to ask.
Right.
You're a troublemaker. Zachariah Sitchin talks about that. I know when I was in seminary, I would ask, we don't ask those questions. Even the simple question of, if we're fighting another country, whose side is God on? Because God is supposed to be. So these questions start getting one into trouble, as it were.
Right.
So we'll never know if, we say, well, he rebelled against God. You can't rebel against God. Yeah, okay. Maybe he rebelled against his commander. Maybe he rebelled against whoever was in charge of the starship. Or you don't mess with them.
Right.
They're our creation. You got to leave them alone. We also know that whether you're talking about the Battle of Troy or David and Bathsheba, sex gets you in trouble. Okay, not sex, period, but
Right.
that eros energy in that first chakra is powerful.
Lust,
You do not want to mess with it.
Right.
Okay, and that's what I get from that. That
Right.
you don't want to mess with that energy because it's brought down king. You have to have a pretty good spiritual discipline because it's very powerful.
Right.
But they do lust. They get drunk, they argue, they fuss, they kill. And so we're taught that, at least here in the West, that God, because we're only talking about one, you can't be asking about others. No, that would never happen. Same thing with Jesus. Jesus could never. We don't want to hear about Jesus being married.
Right.
To Mary Magdalene. We don't want to have. His mother had to be pure virgin. She couldn't have enjoyed a sex life.
Right.
Right. So it's all screwed up. We're so, our culture. You look at TV, and they're selling sex. Okay, like they sell drugs, and you go to movies, and you see all this. But we don't mind it then. But when it comes to other things, we're so prudent. We're split. It's like we can't get whole, and that says a lot about our society. Period.
Right. Yeah, getting back to this Immaculate Conception thing. It wasn't only Jesus; it was Buddha, right?
Yeah. There are a lot of virgin births.
Yeah, and you named a few other. Samson, right?
Well, Samson. I was telling you the other day that it's great to be an angel because every time you meet a woman, they're pregnant.
Right.
It was a great gig. I mean, older women, they're past menopause, but Gabriel meets Miriam, Jesus' mother, she's pregnant. Her cousin Elizabeth, John the Baptist's mother, pregnant. Abraham and Sarah, the angels come and visit her, she's pregnant. That's a great gig.
Yeah.
And the thing is that there's always something special about the women. Don't get named. Samson's mother doesn't have a name. Elizabeth gets named because she's Mary's cousin and that kind of thing. But it's always something special. Jesus, of course, we don't have to go into.
Right.
Samson has the strength. John the Baptist has the tongue. He's the way shower. He's preparing the way. So he's a Nazarene. You don't cut the hair, you don't drink. It's always something special about these beings, these individuals. But when we come to Jesus, if your father is human and your mother isn't, or it's the other way around, if your mother that isn't, that means you're not fully human.
Right.
And so it makes more sense with some of the miracles that went on, and what have you. Even his teachings. I mean, when he says my teachings aren't of this world, I mean, that's why those teachings are so hard to live.
Right.
To love your enemy.
Right.
To not seek your enemy. That's high level of spirituality. High level of spirituality. And so they are otherworldly teachings, but he's saying you can do these things. You can do it.
You can heal.
You can do it,
Yeah.
but we're taught, the church says no. Only he does it.
Yeah.
And, he says, I and my Father are one. Well, he's telling the truth because his Father is probably an extraterrestrial.
Right.
But that's frowned upon.
Yeah.
Because the church needs that power.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You can't have the power.
Right.
The church needs the power.
Right.
And God is out there, not in here. No,
Right,
just separate.
Sitting in a cloud.
Yeah.
Yes,
It looks like
yes,
RJ.
and that kind of teaching will get you in trouble today as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I can say, Michael, that I was kicked out of Sunday school so many times that they finally asked my parents not to bring me back. Because even at 5 years old, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Bible study just did not make sense. I had a lot of these same questions and, I was punished for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that's, you probably were punished in other lifetimes, maybe even lost your life, a couple of those lifetimes. And so you learn today, at least I learned how to walk in different worlds. And, some stuff you didn't bring up.
Right.
Because you didn't bring it up if you were going to be arguing with people about it.
Right.
You went into the catacombs, as it were. And, and so same thing with the UFO phenomenon. You didn't talk. You got together with your friends. You give a little conference, like-minded people, because out there, they think we're crazy. Now we're getting the last laugh. But that's also the spirit of discernment,
Yeah.
Jesus said, right? When we were talking at the conference, I love this saying from him. If we were talking to Nicodemus, if I speak to you of earthly things and you can't get it, how are you going to get it if I speak to you of heavenly things?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
If you're stuck in a three-dimensional world and you don't even get that, how can I speak of higher dimensional frequencies and love? Yep.
And I want to be clear here. There were times, probably in other lifetimes, but even then, where I didn't get it.
Right.
I grew up believing the Bible meant what it said and said what it meant. I grew up with that as a Baptist. So, and I throw that in because because it's easy to get egotistical, man. It's easy to get, well, I got all the answers and you don't.
Right.
Because there were times when when we were the ones where people say, how come Michael can't get this? How come RJ can't get this? So I throw that in to keep us grounded.
Yeah. And
to keep us having compassion
right.
for our fellow human beings.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's our nature to question, or it's our nature to find the truth. It's our nature to want to know the truth. And it's good to question. It's good to, I don't want to say find alternative truths, because the truth is truth to me, but it's good to seek answers.
I agree. You said the magic words. And I remind my congregation of this on Sundays. It's good to be a seeker, but remember, you're seeking in order to find something.
Right.
That's hopefully why you're doing this, so you can get some answers. And there's truths and there's capital truths.
Right.
There are truths that were true 5,000 years ago, and they'll be true 5,000 years from now.
Right.
But then there are also our truths, which in quantum physics tells us that the way we perceive the world is the way the world treats us. And so sometimes our truths may be different. And we're seeing that now with the country, right? Both of us, you got people on one side of the aisle thinking that they're trying to save the country from going down the tubes. And you got people on the other side of the aisle thinking the same thing.
Right.
We got the same thing, but we're seeing it totally different.
Yeah, right.
Because quantum physics tells us that we create our own reality.
Right.
Too.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's Deb's one of those rare females that is colorblind, and she says that's green, and I say no, it's red. It's true to her.
It's still green to me.
It's just the way it is. So, but yeah, that's the point I wanted to make, is that somebody's truth might not be someone else's truth, but
Right.
But the truth, the truth, like you said, that holds fast for eons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like what I put out comes back to me. That's not personal. That's a universal law.
Right.
Okay, that's the truth.
Universal law.
Yeah. At least in this galaxy. Now, maybe in another galaxy, it's somewhere else. But that's what we know that that's true. We know that violence can beget more and more violence. It can.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean, if someone's attacking you or threatening you or a loved one, you may have to respond. There's some people who say, well, I couldn't respond. I'm a pacifist. Okay, that's true for you. That may, but again, there are universal truths that we see in nature, that nature regenerates, that it does, nothing is ever wasted. Again, the universal law is we reap what we sow. Those are always going to be true.
Yep.
For the most part, if I jump off this roof, there's the law of gravity that says I'm going to go splat. We know that if you don't treat people fairly, it comes back around. So those are going to always be true. Mm-hmm. And then there's this truth with small t's, which we see, which we're seeing now play out in world events. Ukraine sees it one way, Putin sees it another.
Right.
Taiwan sees it one way. The
Yeah.
Middle East, and those are the hardest things to reach conclusions on, because when both people are right, when both parties are right, I need a homeland, and you need a place to stay. How do you navigate that?
Yeah,
it's easy when someone else is wrong, but when both parties are right, it's more of a challenge of how we can resolve this.
It's more of a challenge than when both parties are wrong. Absolutely. I mean, because, one could finally see a side, but when they both feel they're right, we need to address this.
It's tough. And that's why when you and I were talking, Mary Beth Weimer, yes. Michael JS.Carter at gmail.com. Michael JS.Carter at gmail. You can catch me there. That's my email. Well, we see it, man. We just see it. We see it played out in our politics. We see it play out in race. We see it played out in how we treat you and I say that some of these beings are our brothers and sisters.
Right.
Right. And then you got some national security folk.
They're a threat.
They're trained that, no, there's a possible threat here.
Yeah.
Possible, but that doesn't mean it is.
Right.
All of them may not be our brothers and sisters. So the question, and if I knew the answer, we could split the Nobel money.
Right.
But we've got to find a way that we can talk about these things on a micro level, RJ and Deb. And RJ, we've talked about it.
Right.
For me to have inner peace, I like Eastern thought because it makes room for gray area.
Mm-hmm.
When I started to give up the need to be right, now, I'm not talking about nations and that's above my pay grade. But when I started to really say, I don't have to be right with this, I don't have to prove anything, my life got more peaceful.
What is your most famous saying by Buddha? Don't.
Well, some people argue that Buddha never really said it. And I don't really care if he did or not. But don't listen to me.
He did say it.
Hear what I say, and go out and learn for yourself.
Yeah. I'm not a god. You go out and learn on your own. You won't hear that in Christianity. And we're not beating up on Christianity.
Right.
But we know Buddha lived 500 years before Jesus.
We're just stating a fact, Yeah.
Yeah. That you don't. And it takes a lot of, the Dalai Lama said it, that if everything he believed about Buddhism was proven wrong,
mm-hmm.
he said, I would have to relearn and take all that in. It takes a very old and wise soul to be able to do that, because most people will resist it.
Right.
And so, but a way, we talk about spiritual growth and what have you, it's looking at your shadow side. But I would suggest to people, look at the areas in your life where you feel like you have to be right. Because if you can let that go, there's a desert and a sea between you and and the rest of humanity, because if you look at the wars and the things that are being fought, arguments, whether it's in Congress or the Kremlin or Bethlehem or Kandahar, well, I got to be right, man. In your relationships, divorces and stuff like that, somebody has to be right. And there are people who that's what their whole life is about, that the need to be right. And it's a spiritual discipline to be able to let that go.
Is it safe to say that they're really afraid to be wrong?
Well, you know, who said it? That one thing about America is that we have to have, if you have a winner, you have to have a loser.
Right.
But yeah, being wrong. I've heard people say, my mother would die before she admits she made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's almost, but mistakes are your greatest teachers.
Yeah.
That's how we learn.
You know, it's okay to be wrong.
If we can't fall down, we can't get back up.
I mean, the word sin in Greek means missing the mark. Doesn't mean you were born in sin.
Right.
Sin, the word sin in Greek is missing the mark. We all miss the mark. It's what it means to be human. But if you don't make mistakes, you can't grow.
Amen. So I know we have a ton of questions we could ask all night long.
I just got one.
But we also have people out there in the audience that would love to ask
that's true.
questions as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are you open to answering
I'm open. And maybe what we don't get done tonight, we'll do another night.
Okay. Sounds
and
great.
another night.
Because an hour goes so quickly.
You know, we could talk for months, right? Years and days.
We all, you know, we've done this before. So
Yes.
We're back doing it again.
Right.
We looked different last time, but we're back doing it again.
So if Bill, if you can hear us, if there is, you know, some big questions out there, feel free to post them. And I'm sure Michael would be happy to give it the best answer he can.
And what I can't answer, I'm going to tell you, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we don't get a question,
RJ has one.
I wanted to tell you that one of the most amazing things that Jesus said to me, and I've always pondered about, was that in my Father's house, there are many mansions.
And I go there to play a place.
Right.
So where I may be, you can be also.
Which means to me, there are many worlds.
You guys are giving me goosebumps.
Many planets, many dimensions, many places that you can exist in.
That's the way I look at it too.
Yeah. So to me,
that's the way I look at it. It's just a comforting saying, you know, that where I may be, you can be too.
Right.
And wise brother.
Right.
I mean, otherworldly brother, you know.
Right.
I mean, you know, it's, you know, and that kind of love is just radical. Mm-hmm. And people who try it, you know, it's a tough sell. Gandhi, King, it's a tough sell.
Yep.
But I guess it's worth the price of admission. That kind of love.
Yes.
Is it scares people.
It does.
It does, but don't you feel that that's what we all want?
Deb, yes and no. And I'll tell you why no.
Right.
You and I, and a lot of people out there, are older souls. And so we've learned from trial and error the other way. Mm-hmm. You got to give other people that room to grow as well. And some people don't want that. Some people want sex, drugs, and rock and roll, man, because the younger souls have to go through what we've gone through, just like we had to at one time. Yeah. You know, we have some of our leaders, 60, 70 years old chronologically, but their spiritual age is very young. And so on some level, I hear what you're saying. You can want that and not know you want it. But the universe in this infinite wisdom, how do you learn acceptance? By putting older souls with younger souls. That's how you learn forgiveness. That's how you learn to accept. Everybody doesn't want that. But they may want it later on. But, you know, some people want the power. Some people want it because that's
Yeah.
all they know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
So
makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm just
I mean,
one of those
that's
that,
my take. And it
yeah.
keeps me in the game because otherwise, that's why I said I try to remember at one point, whether it was this lifetime and some of it was this lifetime, but in other lifetimes, I would probably be the one that was being an ass because that's how you grow and learn.
Yeah.
Right.
And you got to remember that, hey, at one time I was this person
Mm-hmm.
because I had to grow and learn after lifetime, after lifetime, and at the same thing, as we will continue to.
Right.
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 Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, as seekers, we spend our whole lifetimes seeking. And by seeking, as you say, you're looking for truth. You're asking for the truth. You want to see. So we do it in many, many, many ways. It's not always, in my 20s, it was all about make love, not war.
Right.
Now I'm in my 60s, and it's a little bit different.
But there'll come a time when you don't have to seek anymore. There comes a time when I'm reading a course of love, which is like, it's a different channel, but it's more of a heart chakra energy. It's for lack of a better word, it's like kind of part 2 to A Course in Miracles. I recommend it. It's called A Course in Love. The language isn't as antiquated. Yes, the channel says it's Jesus, but the point, it's got some wonderful chapters in there where the entity, who she's saying is Jesus, says there comes a time when you don't have to seek anymore. You know it, now you have to live it.
Right.
Because you can keep seeking and seeking and not get it that you got it. I was spending all this money on books when I was younger, and I realized that these people were saying the same thing in different, whether it was Bartholomew or whether it was the Michael case, whether it was Seth. I got to get that latest book because I got it. And then it came to a point where I was like, I know this. They're just saying it less eloquently, more eloquently, and now I have to live it. Now, some people will say that's arrogant. Who are you? You think you don't have to learn anymore? No, that's not what I'm saying. Right. I'm just saying, but there's certain truths that you learn and you know it, and now you have to put them into practice. Otherwise, you'll spend your whole life in your pocketbook buying books that all say the same thing in different ways.
Right.
And there comes a time when you just have to live it. I got it.
Write your own book.
Yeah.
Now, yes.
Yes.
And you can write that with your life.
Right.
The way you live your life.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you write great books. But I guess, what I'm saying is the more, for me, the more I learn, the more I know, but the more I also realize I don't know.
Well, that's what Plato said, or was it Socrates? I'm wise because I realize how much I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And when it comes to books, I believe that, we have a metaphysical store. So books is a big thing here.
Yeah.
We sell a lot of books. But I tell people, they'll come in and they want all these different books on one topic. And I tell them, use some caution, go within, read it. But remember that all of these books were written by a person with a theory and an opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Feel what feels right for you.
For you. Yeah. Discernment. Yeah. It's because I know people who will just swallow stuff whole because they read it. No discernment at all.
Right.
And they'll repeat it like it's gospel truth. And it's like, well, how do you know that's true?
Right.
Just because someone else said it.
Yeah.
And that goes back to your point about Gautama, about Buddha. Find it out for yourself, man. Yeah. Be a lamp. I think he said, be a lamp unto yourselves.
Yeah, there's a song by a band called Kansas, and one of the lyrics or the line says, if I claim to be a wise man, it surely means that I don't know.
Yeah, because when you're wise, other people will tell you you're wise. You don't have to toot your own horn.
Right.
Right.
So.
Right. So true. I'm amazed that some questions are not coming in.
I think everybody's just listening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
well,
you're blowing minds.
Yeah, no, they can email me, and
right.
If you're out there, this is the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll have you on again. Absolutely.
Oh, I would love to be on. And want to remind folks too, I like Platonic thought because Plato says that everything you see in the visible world is just that the template is in the invisible world. But what he said so many things, but he says that all learning is remembering. So nothing I've really said tonight is new. I mean, it's just wisdom from God. So my job is to remind people that you already know this.
Yeah.
You already know that this is going to happen. And if I touch the stove, it's going to burn me. Hey, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
That's the newest one. It's a year old.
Okay.
Now, I will let you know, brother.
Yeah.
So it's about reminding people what you already know, and it makes us closer because nobody's the guru, and we just remind each other. And he's asking about initiation.
Yeah,
I wanted to write initiation for people like you and me, and because I think going forward, despite what NASA and all everybody plays their part, but experiencers can be the spearhead because we've experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
We've experienced it.
Right.
And so I wanted to write the book for people. The questions I get are, can I believe in God and still be an experiencer and believe in UFOs? How do I know if I've been visited? There's some information that I put in the book where it may give you a clue if you've been visited. I talk about, and I have experiences, stories in it. I talk a little bit about people, how to deal with it if you're an experiencer and your partner isn't, or vice versa, because there's a lot of data that a lot of relationships don't make it because it's hard for the other person to make these adjustments. I talk about, usually there's some type of round enclosure, whether you're outside or even in your room where you're visited. And just that the people like us who we're being initiated, we're trying to pave the way. If you are an experiencer and you feel that despite the trauma that your experience was positive, that you grew from it, that it shifted something in you, then this is the initiation for you to begin your mission. And that's why I call it initiation, the spiritual transformation. Question, Mary Beth. Mary Beth, I will say this. I don't know if they will do anything. Maybe they've done stuff in the past, but you don't want to get to the point where
you depend on that.
You're dependent on them.
Right.
In some ways it's just, yes, maybe they'll do something because when we split the atom, it reverberates in different dimensions. Your neighbors are like, what the hell are they doing down the street? But also, we can't grow up and join into this galactic federation and this new world if we don't, they'll clean up the mess for us.
Yeah.
They're going to clean it up. Don't worry about it.
And do they have the technology to do it? Sure they do, but that's not the point, right? The point is for us to never do it. Yeah.
Right. And remember, we've destroyed ourselves before. The earth has been destroyed before.
Right.
Whether, nuclear stuff, if you go back, if you subscribe to Sodom and Gomorrah was nuclear exchange, there's been wars on the planet.
Yeah.
So it's not, the cockroaches will be here. We'll just have to start all over.
Right.
So in answer to your question, I would hope they would, but I wouldn't count on it. And in some ways, and if there's not a prime directive, I don't know, but I wouldn't, human beings have to learn that this is not the way to carry on if we want to evolve as a species.
Michael, people talk about disclosure and, one of the maybe stumbling blocks is religion and how we're going to do that. And we, and we haven't really, we have never talked about the Law of One, which maybe next time we can get into that.
Well, I have that book.
Right. And,
it's channeled. Yeah.
And it doesn't really take away from your beliefs or anything. It's just that, it's kind of the norm out there,
Well, the thing is this: the law of one is, I mean, again, quantum physics. This is stuff that our ancestors were telling us, and we act like it's really new now.
Right.
But yeah, what I do to you, I do to myself. This is what we're saying. King talked about the interdependent web, the network of mutuality.
We're all connected. We're all connected. Yeah, we're all from the same.
Connected.
We're from the same source.
And that's the law of one.
Right.
Yes.
And so whether I'm green and you're blue, or my hair is dreadlocked and yours is not, it doesn't matter.
Right.
That's stuff that's petty. We all come from the same source. And we all go back to that source. Right. So what we do to the planet, what we do, and that's why religion has gotten it wrong, because we the teachings have separated. Mm-hmm. I'm Protestant, you're Catholic.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm Pentecost, you're Baptist.
But we all come from the same. But that's what nuclear war will teach us.
Right.
Because when the wagon comes, we all got to get on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
When the wagon comes, you can't just say, hey, I didn't. When my friends were in Vietnam at the beginning of the war, all the upheaval here, and then some people told these stories that like some of the black soldiers, if they were on a patrol at the very beginning of the war, they may wipe out a unit, and they told some of the black soldiers, hey, you shouldn't be here.
Right.
This is not your fight. Okay. Now, but as the war went on, you're an American. Everybody's dying.
Yeah.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so you can't say, well, I didn't want to be here and I didn't. No, you're here in my country. So it's not apples and oranges. It wasn't the most eloquent way to put it. But when the bomb drops, it's not going to be, well, Michael's a nice guy. He believes in UFOs and he preaches love in North Carolina. No, I get incinerated with everybody else.
Right.
Well, Michael, my friend, we're down to about 1 minute, and it went quick. And
let's do it again.
Yes.
We love you dearly.
It is reciprocated, brother.
I miss
really
you.
Is. It really is.
Yeah. So
all of Michael's books are on Amazon, right?
Yep.
Michael JS.Carter.
You have a new show coming up?
Well, the Ancient Aliens one should come up soon. It's about the obelisks and is the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia. I'm going to shoot an episode in LA on the Phoenix Lights on Monday night.
Nice.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be doing this again real soon.
Yep.
So,
I'm sorry we couldn't get to everybody's questions. There was
Yeah.
one question that came up we didn't answer.
Yeah, we didn't answer, but we'll give you another opportunity for sure.
But you
Right,
could
and
give
they-
a real quick. Do you need your dark side?
That's what it is. Yeah. Read anything by Carl Jung, because if you deny your dark side, it gets real pathological.
Balance.
You got to be able to integrate, and you don't grow unless you admit you have a dark side.
Yeah.
It's not all peace, love, and hippie shit, right?
Yeah. Just read the Jungian stuff, because if you don't come to grips with your dark side, you will live your life, and everything wrong that happens to you, we call it fate.
Right.
And it's really not fate. It's just that you haven't done the inner work.
Right.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you, guys. I can go home.
Pleasure.
I got to lock the church up
Okay.
and head back home.
All right. Be safe. And
Well,
right.
you and I will talk.
Oh,
Bill, peace to
Yep.
you, and thanks for having me on. Hey, gang, MichaelJS.Carter at gmail.com.
Yes.
Perfect.
Love you.
Love you.
Okay, everybody, it's time for us to go. So remember,
safe.
keep your eyes to the skies, your heart
Yes.
open, and may all of your awakenings be mystical. Tune in next week. Good night.